This is Henos Sport, bringing you that heat and that fire. We keeping a foot on the what? On the next. We keeping a foot on the what? On the next. Now let's talk about it, man. Gary Russell Jr. and Devin Haney. Now, here's the cold-hearted, here's the unadulterated, here's the cutthroat truth teller fashion. When we look at Devin Haney and we look at Gary Russell Jr., there's a underlying facts here. Gary Russell Jr. is asking for $2 million. He doesn't want the 1.5. Here's my thing on that. Gary Russell Jr. has not fought in a long time, and 1.5 would be attractive to any fighter. To be honest with you, that's why I couldn't understand why Teofimo Lopez wouldn't take 1.2 million for the Vasily Lomachenko fight. But that's neither here nor there. I could talk about that in another video. But the facts are the facts here. He's fighting Devin Haney. He wants more, and rightfully so. Unlike Teofimo Lopez, the super duper hype job variation that hasn't done anything, Gary Russell Jr. can actually make this kind of demand. He's been around the sport long enough. He's a fighter that has proven his mettle, proven his weight. He has veteran savvy. So $2 million is not a foregone conclusion. As a matter of fact, when anybody looks at the temperature of Devin Haney and they look at the temperature of Gary Russell Jr., neither one of these fighters are afraid of one another. This is actually a great fight. I say give Gary Russell Jr. the $2 million and let's make the fucking fight happen. Let me say it again. I say give Gary Russell Jr. the $2 million and let's make the fight happen. Because we really need to see where Devin Haney is at. We need to test his fucking temperature. I love Devin Haney. Anybody that's been watching the platform long enough knows that I have him 1A to Shakur Stevenson's 1. Let me say it again. I have him 1A to Shakur Stevenson's 1. But he still got some shit to prove. Especially after his last performance. The cardinal rule in boxing is a fighter is as good as his last performance. His last performance was lackluster. Henos Sport has to tell the truth on that. I did not like the fact that he had a predictable overhand choppy hand right that he kept throwing. That overhand choppy ass right that he kept throwing that was predictable and was allowing Alfredo Santiago to pick him apart and counterpunch him. If that Devin Haney shows up against Gary Russell Jr., he's going to get exposed. But Gary Russell's not going to, Devin Haney's not going to show up that way because he done fell his ass up under the Mayweather and he's crispier than a fucking three-piece now. So I expect Devin Haney to beat Gary Russell Jr. I think it's going to be an arduous type of fight though. Because Gary Russell Jr. brings a lot of experience to the table. Gary Russell Jr. brings a lot of grit to the table. Gary Russell Jr. brings a lot of savvy to the table that Devin Haney's never faced. This would obviously be the hardest opponent that Devin Haney would be facing in the damn ring. Devin Haney would have to be on his A+ shit. That means have your ass in the damn Mayweather gym, fall your ass up under Floyd Mayweather Jr., have you looking crispier than a fucking three-piece the whole damn time. His whole camp need to be with Mayweather Promotions. Let me say it again. His whole camp needs to be with Mayweather Promotions, even though he's under Matchroom Sports. He needs to make sure that he's training with Mayweather the whole way. That is the only way that I can have an assurance that he's going to barely win that fight. Yes, that's how tough that fight is. Anyone that's sitting here deluding their brains, making you think that Gary Russell Jr. is just going to get ran the fuck over by Devin Haney, then you're overvaluing or you're overestimating or you're overstocking Devin Haney. There's some things that Devin Haney needs to continue to show in his ability to get over the hump. This is why Henos Sport was laughing when people were sitting here trying to make it seem like Devin Haney can just go in there and embarrass Gervonta Tank Davis. Are you fucking kidding me? Stop the presses and pump the brakes on the nonsense. Go sit down somewhere and what? Higgity fucking hush. This is a Mayweather versus Zab Judah. First of all, that's disrespectful. Because Gervonta Tank Davis is not a front runner. Zab Judah is a front runner. Gives you all the exploits in the beginning and gasses out on the back end. Tank don't gas out no back end. So let's stop that bullshit comparison. And then Devin Haney is nowhere near what you would think of Floyd Mayweather in your mind. See, nowadays everybody wants to compare any and every fighter to Floyd Mayweather. Let me say it again. Fighters want to compare any and everybody to Floyd Mayweather. Then you have boxing communities that want to separate the two. Why can't we like Devin Haney and Gervonta Tank Davis together? Why do we have to put them at odds? That's such a slavery racial mindset. Let me say it again. It's such a slavery racial Jim Crow 500 plus years of slavery mindset to pin two black people against one another. That doesn't make you black woke, black conscious. It doesn't make you a black inspired boxing community when you do shit like that. That's actually fuck shit. Let Let me say it again. It doesn't make you black woke, black conscious, or black inspired boxing community when you do that shit. That's fuck shit right there. Because when you're all about being for black folks, then you got to be about all of them. I can love Devin Haney because I do love Devin Haney and what he brings to the table as a boxer for what he does, which is his work ethic, which is him staying disciplined and him staying on his craft. But I can also love Gervonta Tank Davis for his special ability, his Roy Jones Jr. meets Mike Tyson ability, his power, his pool counter extraordinaire ability. I can love both of them. I don't need to pick and choose. I can love both of them for different reasons. But that's neither here nor there. What we're talking about here in the context is Gary Russell Jr. versus Devin Haney. Give Gary Russell Jr. his just due, which is $2 million, and let these motherfuckers fight it out. Devin Haney's been calling out Gary Russell Jr. as long as he has. So if you've been calling him out, Devin Haney, because see, here's the thing when he knows the sport. Just because I like a fighter, that don't mean I'm not going to hold their ass accountable. Let me say it again. Just because I like a fighter, that does not mean I'm not going to hold their ass accountable. You've been calling out everybody, Devin Haney. Give that man his $2 million. Because if you can't even give him that, then I'm going to have to say, DuckTales, woo! DuckTales, woo! There's a stranger out to find you. There's a stranger out to find you. What to do is grab on you some DuckTales, woo! I'm going to have to fucking say it's a DuckTales. Because what's the difference in 500,000? Give that man his money so that we can test your temperature. Because the bottom line here, Devin Haney, even though I know, you and I know, like Tupac say, you and I know the truth. You ain't no email champion. But that's the rumors that's being put out there, that the WBC belt was given to your ass or given unto D. Let me say it again, that the WBC belt was given to your ass or given unto D. That's not the case. Lomachenko ducked your ass. Lomachenko opted for the WBC French fry or franchise tag belt. He ducked you. Those are the facts. But fight fans out here, what we call Rudy Porn Plum Plum braids, classic Dolce & troglodytes, ultra fanboys with the ultra fanboy rhetoric, i.e. reverse bias, aka detractors, aka panderers. And what do we say about pandering narratives? They have a ceiling cap. Once it goes up, woo, that motherfucker must come tumbling down. So it's gonna come tumbling down. But the bottom line is, they trying to chin check you to make it seem like you're an email champ. The bullshit that the super duper hype job variation and his dad, when they get fucking exposed by Vasily Lomachenko, came out with, because they ducked your ass too. That's why Devin Haney gets respect out here in these boxing streets. But now it's time for you to prove your mettle. Gary Russell Jr. is a fight for you to prove your mettle, Devin Haney. So let's see what you got. Because I can hold fighters that I love accountable. And that's what I'm doing with Devin Haney. I need to see what your next gear, I need to see what your next evolution. This is a fighter that's a test your temperature type of fight. I say give the man his $2 million, and Devin Haney say, hey, look, we're going to do whatever we can to make this fight happen. I'm Devin the Dream Haney, and I'm going to prove to everyone that all of these people that I said was ducking me at 135, that was the case. This is the time to show that, Devin Haney. It's put up or fucking shut up. Let me say it again. It's put up time or shut up. That's where He Knows the Sport stands on this position. Either you're putting up and you're giving Gary Russell Jr. his $2 million because this motherfucker wants all free smoke from everyone, or you just gonna go sit down somewhere and what? Shut the fuck up. That's the bottom line. So Devin Haney's on the clock right now. Give Gary Russell Jr. his $2 million or go into the abyss and don't be calling nobody out. Because these are the moments that showcase to us if you about what you saying you about or if you about that talk. That's the cold-hearted, that's the unadulterated, and that's the cutthroat truth teller fashion. This is He Knows the Sport. Checking out.